Alright, real quick, shout out to my American Studies class who's currently like everywhere right now. Shout out to my mother who is here, love you, mom. And shout out to Downing who, if he isn't recording this, is going to be murdered by said mother. My father is known throughout the land as a man of several interesting phrases, most of which I've never heard from anywhere else but from him. Because of this, I've dubbed these daddy-ums, idioms for my father. So I'm going to take a few minutes to give you a little insight into the nonsensical things that my family and I say to each other because of him. Let's start with a very specific category of daddy-ums, things that he says to the bears. Note that these are not things he says at or about the bears, but directly to the bears. One of these phrases of encouragement is, "Oh, gag me with a frozen Barbie doll, Jay! Throw the damn ball!" This glorious phrase occurs when he ends up so frustrated with Mr. Jay Cutler that he just can no longer contain his emotions. But on top of that, if Jay finally did throw the damn ball, the follow-up would likely be, "God, Jay, that ball flew like a ruptured duck." This is my mom's favorite daddy-um just because of how completely nonsensical it is. But this is all when we're having a pretty bad game. Enough of the bad though, what about when we're doing well? One of these positive sayings occurs when we get an especially good tackle in, and he yells at the screen, "Yeah, rub off their leg and beat them with it!" Probably the most brutal entry in the list, it's also one of my favorites because of the utter shocked amusement that my mother had on her face the first time I heard it. But finally, the last idiom about the Bears. Let's say the Bears actually get a good play in, but then is immediately called back due to a penalty. My dad then blurts out, "Oh, what is it? Unnecessary football against Chicago?" Well, unfortunately, that never was the call. I always held on to slight hope that unnecessary football would one day be an official rule. However, with football daddy-ums out of the way, let's talk in a more general sense. One incident that now lives in infamy, my older siblings were playing with the cords hanging down from the family room windows, and ultimately, they got tangled. My father angrily stormed over and said, "Oh, come on, kids, now they're all cattywampus." Now, I only recently looked up the word cattywampus to check if that was really a word, and it turns out it is very obscure, but very, very real. Spelled C-A-T-T-Y-W-A-M-P-U-S, it means to be in disarray or disorder. But since that day, my siblings and I made sure to make fun of him for that word every single chance we get. The next idiom is actually Father Bear poking fun of one of us. Cut to early 2000s, a beach house in New Jersey early in the evening. My sister, Jeannie, and my father playing Go Fish together in a very intense game. Realizing that she's on the cusp of a terrible loss, Jeannie finds her way out. Discovering that they're playing with a Christmas-themed deck, and all the cards have a picture of Saint Nick on the back, she looks up, smirks, and says, "Hey Dad, you got any Santas?" He was forced to forfeit all of his cards with copious laughter due to this amazing play. Keeping up with the theme of winter, my father and his band of friends used to go on frequent ski trips all over the country, and from these marvelous journeys, we were given a new daddy-um, a signal for looking for each other. Yo, Chuck! Whenever you need to find anybody in any situation, just yell that out, and wait for the Marco Polo response of, "Yo, Chuck." Why "Yo, Chuck," you might ask? It's actually a pretty simple answer. When's the last time you heard somebody yell the phrase, "Yo, Chuck," besides just now? But there is one daddy-um that I heard every single day, without fail, and it's pretty simple. I love you. This is such a simple little collection of words that I hope everybody has heard from their parents on a pretty consistent basis. But it's different with my dad. He makes it his sole mission to let us know how much he cares about us. From the simple combinations of words, I hear how he's proud of me, I hear about how everything he's done, with the ridiculous late nights at work, the business trips, the crazy stressful dramas he puts up with in his life and ours. It's all for me and my siblings. Everything he has done in the past 30 years was all for the family that he loves so much. Now, I consider myself unbelievably lucky, as this phrase, the most important and memorable words my father ever said, were the last words my father said to me, and as far as I know, the last words he said to anybody. On my way up to bed on late Wednesday, November 19th, 2014, my father stopped me, gave me the usual small talk, and said, "All right, good night, John boy, I love you." A reference to The Waltons, a show he used to watch as a kid, plus these 3 key words. Pretty standard as a goodnight message goes. I thought nothing of it, said goodnight back in a similar fashion, and went to bed. I woke up the next morning to my mother in a huge panic, an armada of emergency vehicles in front of my house, and paramedics and cops everywhere. The lead paramedic came in at 7:20 a.m., Thursday, November 20th, and told my mother and I that David Michael Whitfield, my father, suffered from a fatal heart attack. I'm sure you're wondering, how the hell can you consider yourself lucky when your dad is now dead? And you're right, it's such a terrible occurrence, easily the single most traumatic thing that has ever happened in my life. But I'm lucky because I had 17 1/4 years to learn what being the best damn dead ever means. And I'm not even remotely able to doubt that he loved me with every fiber of his being. I know how to be respectful to my lady, how to be kick-ass at archery, how to always make and keep positive connections, how to be polite to everybody, and especially how to make sure everybody I love in my life is perfectly aware of that fact. However, and obviously the most important thing ever, I have a full bank of daddiums that I can use when I'm one day a father. I can't wait to watch my son laugh as I make fun of the Bears, whether they're good or bad, how to instantly win a game of Go Fish with my daughter, what to say to get the attention of lost group members, and finally, how to let my future kids know that I love them and I hold them above everything else in my world, just as my father did for me.